Before I start the video, if you have not subscribed to my channel, I'd appreciate it if you could click that subscribe button. Also, if you like the video, click the like button and leave comments in the comments section. I'd also like to give a huge shout out to Nerdrotic, Jeremy Prime, The Fellowship, and the 199. You guys really humbled me over the last week. I never expected to get to almost 300 subscribers. You guys went up and beyond, and I just hope that moving forward I can keep you as subscribers and we can grow this channel together. But I was so surprised in a good way by all of you, and I really, really appreciate it. With that, let's get on with the video. Today, I'm going to talk about something Gary said throughout the years that I've kind of had a small problem with. He said that the Lord of the Rings trilogy is a 10 out of 10, and I don't agree with that for several reasons, and I'm going to give a few of those reasons today. I'm going to start off by quoting Peter Jackson, who said he didn't want to impose any of his own messages or ideas into the movies. Instead, he wanted to focus on the themes dealt within Tolkien's novels. The first part I completely agree with. He didn't add any messaging. He didn't add any different ideas. But at the same time, I think he left some of the themes that Tolkien wrote into the novels out of the movies. I also have a huge problem with how Aragorn was portrayed. I didn't like it. And there's a lot of reasons I didn't like it. Starting with choosing Viggo Mortensen as Aragorn. I get it for the script that Peter Jackson wrote for this. He fits that character. However, he is not Aragorn from the books. Aragorn in the movies is brooding. He believes that he has the same weakness that Isildur had. He has a lot of self-doubt, and his character arc is getting through all that and becoming the king he was supposed to be. If there wasn't a completely different story, that's a great character arc. The problem is Tolkien wrote Aragorn as a man who was a king from the day he was born. The fallacy about Isildur being weak really bothers me. Isildur was not weak. Isildur was a great man. He was one of 3 people who was able to stand in front of the true form of Sauron and not go Joe Biden. And what I mean by that is become completely befuddled and piss and shit themselves. Most men, when they looked upon the true image of Sauron, lost their minds and shit and piss themselves. During the Battle of the Last Alliance, when Sauron's physical form was slain, Gil-galad, Isildur, and Elendil were the 3 people that stood in front of him and did not panic. 2 of them lost their lives, and Isildur was the only survivor, and he removed the ring from Sauron's finger. The fact that he couldn't destroy the One Ring, even though he was encouraged to do so, was not weakness. There are only two people in all of Middle-earth that could destroy the One Ring. And for different reasons, neither one of them would ever conceive of doing so. The first is Sauron himself, and of course, if he destroyed the ring, it'd basically be committing self-deletion, so he's not going to do that. And the second is Tom Bombadil. Tom Bombadil probably wouldn't do it because he wouldn't understand why he had to do it. He had an aloofness about him. The ring didn't affect him, but at the same time, he just didn't have the understanding of why any of this was significant to him. Anyone else could not have done it. Gandalf didn't want to touch the thing. Aragorn didn't want to touch it. Nobody else wanted to touch it. So this is a complete fallacy that Isildur was weak. Isildur was just a man like any other man. He was a great man, but he still fell under the power of the ring. It still influenced him because no man in Middle-earth would have been strong enough to resist it. Like I said, Aragorn in the book knew who he was, what he was. That's why Andúril is forged from the shards of Narsil before he leaves Rivendell with the Fellowship. That is basically part of his heritage, is that sword. And it further proves that he's ready to be king. If Aragorn in the book ever expressed any doubts, it's when we get to the breaking of the Fellowship. Boromir is killed by Saruman's Uruk-hai. Merry and Pippin are taken hostage by them. And Sam and Frodo go off on their own adventure at that point. Aragorn takes quite a while to contemplate what he should do next. He doesn't know what to do. Should he go after Merry and Pippin, or should he go after Frodo and Samwise? Eventually, he chooses Merry and Pippin, which ends up being the right decision in the book. The next thing that I really didn't like is how Jackson dealt with the army of the dead. They're a lot different in the book. They have no power to cause physical harm. Their only power is to scare people. And Aragorn uses them to scare off the sailors of the coursers of Umbar. He basically gets them to jump ship, and he takes control of those vessels and rallies all of the troops in southern Gondor that did not go to the siege of Minas Tirith because they were afraid of being attacked by the Corsairs. Once the Corsairs were eliminated, they all joined Aragorn and headed to Minas Tirith. The great moment for Aragorn is when the Corsairs show up. At first, it looked like they were going to be aiding Sauron's forces. But then he unveils the Signia Elendil on the ships, and it raises the hopes of the Riders of Rohan and the defenders of Minas Tirith. At the same time, it demoralizes Sauron's army, and they basically flee the field of battle. That is a great moment right there. It's a great moment for Aragorn. Jackson's version has no stake in this whole battle because when the army of the dead show up, they just kill everybody. I mean, they just slaughter everyone. There's no stake. There's nothing up to that point that really mattered. The heroics of the Riders of Rohan, the heroic defenders of Minas Tirith, everything they've been through is minimalized because this army just comes up and wipes everybody out. It's not good storytelling. And by the way, the reason why Aragorn dismisses the army of the dead, holds their vow fulfilled after chasing off the Corsairs, is because their fear would have worked on the defenders of Minas Tirith as well as the attackers. They didn't have like a switch to say, oh, well, let's just scare the bad guys or let's just scare the good guys. It worked on everyone except for like the Dunedain. The other thing was, it was entirely possible that someone like the Lord of the Nazgul, the Witch King, could have taken control of that army by some sort of spell and actually turned it against Aragorn. So it was dangerous to bring the army of the dead to Minas Tirith. The last part, and probably the most grievous, and this one hurt me, is when they're at the Black Gate and the mouth of Sauron comes out under a flag of truce and Aragorn beheads him. This literally caused me, when I saw it in the theaters, to turn into Vito Corleone and say, look how they've massacred my boy. Aragorn was the noblest of people. He wouldn't kill anyone, no matter how awful they were, if they were under a flag of truce. It wouldn't happen. It's horrible. The second problem I have, main problem I have with the movies, is the exclusion of the Barrow Downs. Now you're going to have to throw Tom Bombadil in there. But specifically the Barrow Downs, because the daggers of the Westernese play a pivotal role in the Witch King being killed by Éowyn. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with the prophecy, Glorfindel said that far off yet is his doom, speaking about the Lord of the Nazgul, the Witch King, and not by the hand of man will he fall. Now, somehow, this got twisted. I mean, I don't know if you've ever played that game where you whisper in someone's ears. I think they call it telephone or something, Chinese telephone. I'm not sure. But you whisper like a phrase or something in someone's ear, and then they pass it on, and they pass it on, and pass it on, and then it comes back to you. And like, by the time it gets back to you, it's got a completely different meaning. Well, by the time we get to this battle between Éowyn and the Witch King, it somehow morphed into no living man may hinder me. that was not what Glorfindel meant. He meant that there was going to be a series of circumstances and fate that was going to be the Witch King's downfall. And these daggers of the Westernese were designed to exactly do that. They were designed to break the spell that linked the will of the Witch Queen to his unseen sinew. If you know anything about the Nazgul, hitting them with normal blades caused those blades to basically disintegrate. You couldn't hurt them because of this spell. So you needed that dagger to break the spell. That's what they were made for. Had Mary not struck the Witch King with that dagger, Eowyn would have died. As it was, she almost died anyway, but she would have died. She would have not been able to defeat him. And in the movie, all you get is Mary walks up behind, or crawls up behind the Witch King, stabs him with a dagger. It seems like an ordinary dagger to me. And then Eowyn stabs him through his cowl. Kind of anticlimactic. And, you know, seriously, Gandalf was basically overpowered by the Witch King. And they survived drowning by Elrond when he rose the river against them to protect Frodo as they were pursuing him into Rivendell. Yet, we're to believe that a normal sword with no special abilities killed the Witch King. It just doesn't make any sense, which is why leaving that part out, it really damages the story. And I think probably the most grievous thing that he left out, and this is the last thing I'm going to talk about, is the scouring of the Shire. One of Tolkien's main themes in these books is that war touches everything. And that is what the scouring of the Shire is about. In the movie, well, they just ride home and pick up their lives, except when Frodo starts feeling ill because of the Morgul knife wound and the bite from Shelob. But everybody else just goes about their business like nothing ever happened. And that wasn't what Tolkien wanted to convey. Tolkien had been in war. Tolkien understood what damage war did to everything. And that was one of his main messages. And leaving out the scouring of the Shire is an injustice, in my opinion. In the scouring of the Shire, Saruman has basically taken over the Shire with what he had left of his Uruk-hai. And Sam had seen that when he looked into the Mirror Galadriel. He had seen this happening. And he was afraid. And unfortunately, this vision actually came to pass. So when they go home, they have to rally the hobbits of the Shire against the Uruk-hai. And finally, they get all the way to where Saruman is hiding in Bag's End, I believe, with Grima Wormtongue. There's a confrontation. Frodo is willing to forgive Grima because he sees that Grima's just been influenced by Saruman, and Saruman has influenced so many and turned them to evil. And Saruman basically says that Grima had murdered and possibly eaten the mayor of Hobbiton. And Grima becomes so enraged, he pulls out a knife and slits Saruman's throat. And then a bunch of hobbits fill Grima with arrows before anyone can react. And that's the end of Saruman in the book. And I think it's a more fitting ending than the ending in the movies. So this is my 3-part evidence that it's not a perfect 10. In my opinion, they should have done at least 5 movies. I mean, quite possibly you could do 6. But The Fellowship and The Return of the King should have been 2-parters. There's stuff in both of those books that are integral to the story that are left out of the movies. And with that, I'm going to wrap up this video. And like my father told me when I was 18 years old, get out.